guess that was a pretty complicated week. My watchings look like the watchings for a normal week, but I guess part of that is probably, well, one of the things that delayed me from doing the apartment tour that I uploaded the end of last week. Well, naturally that also interferes with my ability to watch stuff, but I've also, I'm living in the same apartment complex as a friend, and I've been able to get together with him. So that means that we've watched more One Piece, and so that he can, he's actually watched more One Piece in the past month than he probably had in the past 3 months, I'm guessing. Of course, part of that is we've been trying to get through Babylon 5. He's showing me Babylon 5, and I'm showing him One Piece, right? And, yeah, so I ended up spending a lot of time with that friend, and I probably had a brother come over, and I'm trying to remember what we did. I can't remember exactly. All I know is it's a pretty average amount of stuff watched this week, and the top of the list, I didn't even remember I had done this within the week, is Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, or Pokemon Season 10. I finished watching that. That was just the 6th disc. I don't even remember what happened on there. It's probably not much of a surprise. It's not that Pokemon is spectacular, I guess. All I can say is Paul's an asshole. Fuck him. He doesn't deserve that Chimchar. Okay, now that I've got that out of the way, the next thing on the list is Himawari 2, right? That's actually... I thought that was... Oh yeah, it's right here. Yay. Himawari 2. And I actually enjoyed this more than the first season. So, I seem to... Let's see if I can remember what my opinions on the first season were. I remember probably talking about feeling uncomfortable with it, maybe. Like, this first season is all about us knowing the characters and learning about the characters, and, basically just... I mentioned that for most of the characters, something just really felt off about me. Sometimes the humor, sometimes the way the characters spoke versus how they looked, And I guess that's why the second season was so great for me, is because the second season's like, okay, now we're going to have a purpose. And, it's not that the characters were bad, it's just that, being focused only on the characters, which most I kind of felt meh about, it meant that the first season didn't really have as much entertaining as I thought it would, other than the opening, which had a real catchy beat to it. But the second season, has story to it, and, I'm not quite sure it was necessarily the most spectacular thing I did, but I found it to be a lot more easier to watch than the first season, which was quite pleasant. The other thing is, I talked about, finding the first season's opening to be kind of catchy. Well, for me, the second season, the closing was it, especially those versions of the closing which involved the music that sounded a lot more like video game music, I guess. But I think the regular version of it is also kind of catchy in a way. And there's a lot of different versions of it. I should have probably fired up the first season just to see if there were a ton of different versions of the closing song for that one as well, just to satisfy my own curiosity. But as it is for now, all I know is I really liked the closing credits on the second season, and I thought it was pretty good. I mean, that's like super spectacular, but entertaining. And let's see, in anticipation of this release this week of Sekirei 2, I watched Sekirei 1, and because I wasn't quite sure if I remembered everything I had watched before too well, I rewatched the first disc, and because, it was just an additional 7 episodes, it's not that big of a deal. And as it turns out, I probably didn't need to, because I actually remembered more from it than I thought I did. And I probably could have just picked it up from Season 1, Disc 2. But I got to watch it all from beginning to end. And I have to say that, I've talked a lot lately about there's a lot of anime out there that are harem anime which kind of hinge a lot on it's okay to treat guys bad, and that kind of being a little unsettling for me, and sometimes ruining what would otherwise be a fun anime for me, right? And Sekirei does a little bit of that too, but I found that they kind of divide their humor out into different styles, perhaps. Almost among the different Sekirei the guy has, kinda, except they didn't really go. I felt like Sekirei kept things a lot more balanced, and something about it was really refreshing to watch after the other stuff that just haven't synchronized well with me, you know? And so I thought it was really valuable to at least start over with that series, and I enjoyed it. Obviously not a complete story, but there's a second season, so I don't hold it to accountable for that. And it especially is hard to hold it accountable for that when I just watched Himawari 2, and I found the second season to be much more interesting story-wise than the first season. Now, this may mean that Sekirei falls flat on its face. I don't know, because the second season just arrived and I haven't even had a chance to throw it in the player yet. But, you know, I watched it in anticipation of today, and I'm looking forward to watching it. I don't think I have much to comment on about the special, since it's pretty much filler material, I guess. Not bad, just not. It didn't feel particularly relevant. It kind of hard to describe. I would call it more pleasant than the first season of Himawari, but I already said that I was unsure about the first season of that. So I don't know if that's a valid, useful point of comparison. Anyways, the other two things I watched. This is a kind of a strange week in that this is the first time I've started watching hentai for the story. Previously, I had only watched it for interesting scenes, if you know what I mean. If you don't, I'm not going to go into more detail on that. But in a nutshell, I'm kind of curious more about the way they're put together. And so the first title I watched is a 2-episode OVA called 2x1. And now it occurs to me why it's called that, because it's about two guys, one girl, essentially. Except that, well, the real problem with it is, well, I'm kind of expecting this of a lot of hentai. It has a kind of strange premise about people going through adolescence in a kind of awkward way, I guess. And the real problem with it is it doesn't really end, I guess. Not that I'm holding hentai up to a very high standard. So it was kind of interesting being the first series to watch like that, where it's like, so it ended unresolved, and this hint that this guy's sister might have really liked him, and maybe it turning into a 2x2 or something. I don't know. All I know is it just kind of flowed along, I guess. The other thing I watched is a title called A Time to Screw, and that was actually quite amusing. It actually lived up to the purpose for which I bought it, which is to say, I hadn't actually even browsed that one for scenes. It was basically a title that I picked up because people had talked about the dub being funny, and you know what, I actually found the dub being funny. I can't quote some of the lines here on YouTube. In fact, I even wonder if I should quote the title, but I think we're okay with the title, right? And the dub, it was pretty silly. It almost reminds me of Ghost Stories. I wouldn't say it's completely as off the wall as Ghost Stories, but it still, watching it felt a lot like that. You could definitely feel watching it that what they were saying was nowhere near what they were probably actually saying, but it was ridiculously funny. And I think I can come up with a good example where in the original subtitled version, in the opening scene, the girls are talking about their appreciation for the master of the house, essentially. But in the English dub version, they're talking about Einstein and how sexy he was. Because I just love a man with a sexy brain or something like that, if I remember their quotes correctly. And, you know, just saying really silly things kind of around that. It was amusing to watch. Now, that said, I only watched the two, and now I've got a lot more things to watch again, so who knows if I'll have the time to do it again with all my plans for this coming week. But you know that was actually those two things, 2x1 and A Time to Screw, were actually pretty interesting way to start going into the hentai story exploration. Overall, I don't know if I don't know if I would say it all ended right. But I guess I can't really talk too much about the details there. So I'll just go ahead and leave it at that comment, I guess, and end it anime analysis there.